I can do it for the team, but I am in terrible pain. Those were the words spoken after England's win over the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they belong to Declan Rice. Not a manager. Not a pundit. The player himself, mid-tournament, mid-pain, still choosing to go again. Let that sit for a moment. This is Arsenal's record signing. The player Mikel Arteta built his midfield around, admitting out loud that he is hurting, while still being expected to take the field if selected. That is not a rumour. That is not speculation dressed up as news. That is a direct admission, and it changes how every Arsenal supporter should be watching the closing weeks of this World Cup. Because right now, while the football world is fixed on quarter-finals and semi-finals, there is a quieter storyline running underneath it. It is the story of a club watching its most important players carry the weight of a brutal season into an even more brutal summer, with no real off-switch in sight. Declan Rice has been dealing with a neural hamstring issue since the very start of 2026. He was substituted against Croatia after taking a knock. He has been seen with ice and strapping around his leg. And now, in the later stages of this tournament, he is choosing pain over rest. This is the moment. Not some distant pre-season update, not a transfer graphic on social media. This is a player in real time telling everyone exactly where he stands, and a club that has to decide how to respond. So what is actually at risk here? Arsenal are not just watching one player. They have 15 members of their squad away at this World Cup, and depending on how far each nation goes, those players could be facing anywhere between 3 and 9 additional matches on top of a season that has already produced 63 games for this squad collectively. 63 matches. That is not a typo, that is the workload already logged before a ball has even been kicked in pre-season. Some of that burden has already eased. Piero Hincapié, Victor Gyökeres and Kai Havertz have all seen their nations exit the competition, which in football terms is a strange kind of relief, an early flight home that actually protects the body. But for the players still competing, especially those going deep into the knockout rounds, every extra match is a gamble against fitness for the new season. And Rice is the biggest gamble of them all. England have progressed to the last 16 and now face Mexico. Win that, and the quarter-final arrives, with Brazil a realistic opponent. Every round England survive is another round Rice potentially plays through pain, and another week shaved off his recovery window before Arsenal need him fit and firing for the Premier League opener. Here is the number that should worry every Arsenal supporter. The World Cup final is scheduled for July the 19th. The Premier League season begins August the 21st, with Arsenal hosting Coventry City at home. If England go all the way to the final, Rice would have roughly 3 weeks off before he is expected to return to action, and that estimate does not even account for any celebrations, media commitments, or the kind of post-tournament come-down that follows a deep international run. 3 weeks, for a player already carrying an injury he described as terrible pain, to prepare for a Premier League campaign. That is the stakes. Not hypothetical. Not exaggerated. Just simple arithmetic on a calendar, layered on top of a player who is already hurting. Before we go further into this, if you want this level of detail on every Arsenal story, the injuries, the transfer moves, the things that actually matter beneath the headlines, hit that subscribe button. This channel is built for supporters who want the full picture, not just the highlight reel. Now, let us get into the deep dive. The Rice situation. Let us start with the central figure, because everything else this summer is being shaped around his fitness. Declan Rice has not been quiet about his condition. He has openly admitted to suffering from a neural hamstring issue, and that admission goes back to the start of 2026, which tells you this is not a sudden World Cup knock. This is something that has been building and being managed for months. Then came the moment against Croatia, where he was taken off the pitch after absorbing a kick. Since then, the images have told their own story. Ice packs, strapping around the leg, a player visibly working to hold himself together during interviews while insisting he can still perform. There is a pattern worth noticing here. Publicly, Rice remains upbeat. He talks about his ability to play. He tells the media he can do it for the team. But the physical evidence, the ice, the strapping, the substitution, tells a slightly different story than the words. And now we have that direct quote following the win over the Democratic Republic of Congo, where he admitted he is in terrible pain but still expected to continue playing if selected. That gap between the public confidence and the physical reality is exactly what should concern Arsenal. The growing worry is straightforward. Playing through pain does not just risk a slightly delayed recovery, it risks aggravating the injury into something far more serious. A hamstring problem that is managed carefully can heal in weeks. A hamstring problem that is repeatedly stressed under competitive match intensity can turn into a long-term issue that bleeds into the opening months of the Premier League season. Arsenal will be hoping England's medical staff are managing his workload with real care, because the club has almost no control over that process right now. Rice belongs to his national team for the duration of this tournament, and every decision about whether he starts, whether he is withdrawn early, whether he trains fully between matches, is being made without Arsenal's medical staff in the room. For now, Rice remains determined to keep helping England push through the competition. That is admirable from a competitive standpoint. But determination and medical reality do not always align, and the risk here is real, not manufactured for headlines. The wider injury picture Rice is not an isolated case. He is simply the most alarming example of a broader pattern running through this Arsenal squad. William Saliba has a rumoured back problem, and this is worth being precise about, because it is described specifically as a rumour, with some reports claiming it could even require a procedure to correct once the tournament finishes. That is not confirmed. That is not official. That is a reported concern, and it should be treated with that level of caution until anything more concrete emerges. What we can say with certainty is that Arsenal are actively monitoring his long-term fitness, and that this back concern could influence investment in the centre-back position this summer, regardless of whether Saliba himself ends up needing surgery. Then there is Bukayo Saka, who has been dealing with ongoing Achilles tendinitis. This has limited him to starting just one of England's 4 matches so far in the competition, with Noni Madueke stepping in to cover the right-wing role in his absence. Think about that for a second. One of Arsenal's most important attacking players, the kind of talent who usually starts every match he is fit for, has only been trusted to start once through 4 games. That tells you everything about how seriously his fitness is being managed, and it should tell Arsenal supporters that the injury concerns extend well beyond midfield. There is also a separate storyline circulating around Saka's fitness heading into the next England fixture. The suggestion is that even if he is only around 80% fit, he should still start against Mexico, because his quality outweighs the risk. That is a reasonable football opinion, but it is also a small window into how thin the margins are getting. When pundits are openly discussing playing a key player at 80%, that is a sign the tournament schedule is squeezing everyone involved, players, coaches, and medical staff alike. So here is the picture forming. Rice with a hamstring issue he describes as terrible pain. Saliba with a rumoured back problem that could need a procedure. Saka managing Achilles tendinitis and starting sparingly. 3 key players, 3 different injury concerns, all converging on the same short recovery window before Arsenal need them fully fit for a new Premier League campaign that begins August the 21st. The Timber situation. There is another fitness-related storyline worth addressing, this time involving Jurrien Timber and his relationship with the Netherlands national setup. There is reported frustration within the Netherlands camp regarding Arsenal's decision to field Timber in the Champions League final before his involvement at the World Cup. The situation is said to have caused tension behind the scenes, and this is playing out while Timber continues his own recovery and workload management process. This is a smaller story than the Rice situation, but it points to the same underlying issue. Club versus country tension over player workload is becoming a recurring theme this summer, and it reflects just how demanding this season has been across the board. When a national team setup is expressing frustration over how a club managed a player's minutes before international duty, that is a signal of how tightly stretched everyone is. Arsenal made a decision that served their own competitive needs in the Champions League final, and now they are dealing with the diplomatic fallout of that decision, while Timber's recovery continues under scrutiny from multiple directions. The Saliba to Barcelona speculation. Now let us shift into transfer territory, and the first name that needs addressing is William Saliba, because there are 2 separate stories involving him this summer, and it is important not to blur them together. The first is the fitness concern already discussed, the rumoured back problem. The second, entirely separate, is transfer speculation. Barcelona are reported to be interested in signing Saliba this summer. The French centre-back is said to be on their radar as they assess reinforcements for the defensive line ahead of the new season. On Arsenal's side, the figure being floated is significant, with the club reportedly demanding a fee in the region of €150 million to even consider letting him leave. I want to be very clear about how to read this. This is transfer speculation, sourced through a reporter known for transfer information, not a confirmed negotiation. There is no indication Arsenal are willing to sell, and the fee mentioned, €150 million, functions less like a genuine asking price and more like a deterrent, a number designed to signal that this player is not for sale under normal circumstances. When a club sets a fee that high on a player central to their defensive structure, it usually means they expect the conversation to end there. What makes this more complicated is the fitness angle running alongside it. If the rumoured back issue turns out to be serious enough to require a procedure, that could complicate any transfer interest regardless of what Barcelona are willing to offer. No club spends genuine nine-figure money on a defender with an unresolved back concern without serious medical reassurance first. So these two threads, the injury rumour and the transfer interest, are actually connected in a way that is easy to miss if you only look at one headline at a time. For now, my read is simple. This is speculation worth watching, not a deal in progress. Arsenal's valuation suggests no intention to sell, and Saliba remains too important defensively for the club to seriously entertain an exit this summer. Kepa Arrizabalaga wants out moving to the goalkeeping situation, and this one is more advanced than the Saliba speculation. Kepa Arrizabalaga has reportedly informed Arsenal that he wants to leave the club this summer in search of regular first-team football. Juventus and Napoli are named among the clubs leading the chase, with both said to have made inquiries. This is a very different category of story compared to the Saliba rumour. This is not outside interest speculating about a valuable asset. This is the player himself communicating a desire to leave because he is not getting the minutes he wants. That distinction matters enormously. When a player tells his club he wants to go, the direction of travel usually points toward an exit, provided the financial terms and a suitable destination can be agreed. From Arsenal's perspective, this makes sense in the context of squad building. If David Raya remains the clear first choice, then a second goalkeeper of Kepa's calibre sitting on the bench indefinitely is not sustainable for either party. Interest from Juventus and Napoli suggests there is a genuine market for him, and if Arsenal can secure a fee, even a modest one, freeing up his position and his wages could allow for reinvestment elsewhere in the squad. Given everything already discussed about central midfield needs and defensive depth, every bit of financial flexibility matters this summer. I would treat this one as more likely than not to happen, purely because the motivation is coming from the player himself, not from speculative external interest. Zinchenko's return to train at Arsenal. Here is a smaller, more human story, but one that deserves attention because it says something about the club's culture. Arsenal have allowed former player Alexander Zinchenko to train at their Soba Realty training centre this summer, following his release from Ajax. He is now a free agent, and in doing this, Arsenal are extending him the same support previously given to Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Jack Wilshere, both former players who were also welcomed back to train at the club's facilities after their careers took them elsewhere. This is not a transfer story. There is no indication Zinchenko is returning to the playing squad. What this tells us instead is something about the relationships this club maintains with players who have worn the shirt, even after they have moved on, and even after a spell away has not worked out as hoped. It is a quiet gesture, but a meaningful one, and it fits a broader pattern of goodwill Arsenal seem to extend toward former players during transitional moments in their careers. Enzo Fernandez interest now to a name that will get attention purely because of the size of the transfer fee potentially involved. Manchester City and Arsenal are both reported to be gathering information on Enzo Fernandez, the 25-year-old Chelsea midfielder. However, and this is important, Real Madrid are described as his first-choice destination. For Real Madrid to actually present a formal offer to Chelsea, they reportedly need to make what is described as a sacrifice, likely referring to moving on another player or restructuring their squad to create the financial space. That detail alone tells you this situation is far from resolved. So where does that leave Arsenal? At this stage, gathering information is a preliminary step, not a serious approach. It means scouting departments and recruitment staff are doing background work, assessing value, monitoring the situation, keeping options open. It does not mean formal contact has been made, and it certainly does not mean Enzo Fernandez is close to joining either Manchester City or Arsenal. Given that his stated preference points toward Real Madrid, and that a move there hinges on Real Madrid's own squad sacrifices, this is a name to file away as a monitoring situation, rather than an active pursuit. If Real Madrid's move stalls, that is when this story could genuinely heat up for Arsenal or their Manchester rivals. Ezri Konsa and the knock-on effect for Morgan Rogers. This next story matters because it reveals something about how Arsenal's transfer priorities are interconnected, not isolated decisions made in a vacuum. Arsenal are reported to hold tentative interest in Aston Villa defender Ezri Konsa. Villa are expected to value the England international at around £60 million, and Arsenal are currently described as reluctant to meet that price. Here is the part that really matters. Any move for Konsa could directly impact Arsenal's pursuit of Morgan Rogers, who remains a key target but is valued by Villa at a British record fee of £130 million. Two Aston Villa players, two significant valuations, and Arsenal's spending power is not unlimited. If the club commits significant funds to one Villa player, it inevitably affects what remains available for the other. This is where squad planning becomes a balancing act. Konsa represents defensive reinforcement, which connects directly back to the Saliba fitness concerns discussed earlier. If Saliba's back issue proves serious, defensive investment becomes more urgent, which could push Konsa up the priority list. But Morgan Rogers represents attacking reinforcement, and if he remains the primary target, the funds required for a British record fee of £130 million would likely make a simultaneous £60 million move for Konsa far less realistic. My analysis here is that Arsenal are weighing need against cost across two different areas of the pitch, defence and attack, using the same finite resources. The reluctance to meet Villa's valuation for Konsa suggests defence is currently the lower priority of the two, at least until there is more clarity on Saliba's actual medical situation. Santi Cazorla retires, now to a story that carries a different emotional weight entirely, and it deserves careful handling because it touches something beyond transfers and tactics. Santi Cazorla has announced his retirement from senior football at the age of 41. He finished his career at his boyhood club, Real Oviedo, closing out a journey that began and ended in the same place. Across that career, he won trophies in Spain, England and Qatar, and he even captained the Spanish national team in June of 2019, a remarkable achievement for a player whose career was repeatedly tested by injury. For Arsenal supporters specifically, Cazorla's 6 years at the club left a lasting impression, one built on technical brilliance and, sadly, disrupted by significant injury problems in the latter stages of his time in North London. He became, in every sense, a fan favourite, someone whose ability on the ball made difficult moments in matches feel manageable, even inevitable. What makes this retirement particularly interesting from an Arsenal perspective is what it might open up next. Speaking to Sky Sports back in 2024, Cazorla revealed that he had already had conversations with Mikel Arteta, his former teammate turned Arsenal manager, about a possible return to the club. At that time, his focus remained on his playing career, but he made clear the door had always been left open by Arsenal for a future return. Arteta himself addressed this possibility around 2 years ago, describing his personal fondness for Cazorla and praising the energy and trust he could bring if he joined the coaching staff in some capacity. Those are not throwaway comments from a manager being polite about a former teammate. Those are specific remarks about trust and energy, qualities Arteta clearly values highly when assembling people around his coaching setup. Even earlier, back in 2023, Cazorla was more direct still, suggesting he could see himself returning not just as a coach, but potentially in an executive capacity, perhaps even as a sporting director. His own words were that he did not know exactly which position, coach or sporting director, but that he would like to come back to Arsenal in the future if the opportunity arose. Now that his playing days are officially over, all of these previous conversations take on new relevance. Following the retirement announcement, Arteta posted a direct message to Cazorla, calling it an honour and a gift to have known him as a person and to have been his teammate, thanking him for what he gave to football and for always putting on a smile. That is not standard, generic praise. That is a specific, warm tribute from a manager to someone he clearly still holds in high regard. Arsene Wenger, the manager who brought Cazorla to Arsenal in the first place, also offered his own tribute, describing him as someone who loved football passionately, loved being on the pitch, and always came in with a smile every day when he was fit. Two Arsenal managers, from different eras of the club, offering strikingly similar praise about the same qualities, his love for the game and his positive presence around the group. Putting all of this together, my analysis is that a return to Arsenal in some capacity looks like a real possibility, even if nothing is confirmed or imminent. The relationship with Arteta is clearly strong and has already produced direct conversations about a future role. The affection from the wider club, illustrated by both Arteta and Wenger's tributes, suggests the door genuinely remains open. Whether that eventually becomes a coaching role, working with the current squad, or something closer to an executive position, only time will tell. But the foundation for that return has clearly already been laid, through years of conversations and mutual respect that long predate this retirement announcement. Saka's fitness and England's selection debate. Returning briefly to the international picture, there is an ongoing conversation about how England should approach selection, given the fitness situations affecting several Arsenal players. The specific debate centres on who should start on the right wing for England against Mexico. The view expressed is that England's coaching staff need to resolve uncertainty around the right-back area and settle on their preferred wide options. Marcus Rashford is described as not having lived up to expectation in that role, while Jack Grealish is credited with performing well on the left side after coming on as a substitute. But the most important point made is straightforward. If Saka is fit, he has to start, even if he is only around 80% physically.